Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Switch to Life, and today we're going to be reviewing Illumination's latest movie, that of course being Despicable Me 4. And I gotta say that I really enjoyed this movie, like a lot more than I thought I would, which is really saying something. But all in all, I thought it was a really good film, so let's talk about why it's good. First off, the animation. The animation is by far the best thing that we've seen from Illumination, aside from the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but that makes sense. The music for this film is also really good. Maybe not as good as the first two films, but still really amazing. And then of course there's the voice acting for this film, which is really awesome. Steve Carell, as always, does an amazing job as Gru. I kind of wish he could have voiced Drew in this movie, but it makes sense why he didn't. But of course, there's also Maxime Lamal, played by Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell did an amazing job at making Maxime his own character, and that's really awesome. And then there's the humor. There is a lot of humor going into this movie, not just from the minions, but also from the actual characters, and that's really cool. And then there's the story. The story of this film is really good, though it can be a bit predictable at some points. And honestly, I really enjoyed it, especially due to the many different plot threads that was going on. Granted, that does mean that this movie might feel a little rushed in some cases. Some stories don't get the treatment that they should get. And then there's others that get overtreated, like they take up so much valuable screen time that doesn't even add to the plot, like the Mega Minion storyline. I'm pretty sure that was included in just so they could market and merchandise more Minion stuff. And another thing that I want to point out is that this movie dives into the nostalgia by bringing back a ton of characters. We'll get more into that later, but overall, I thought the film was a really great story. And, well, this is where we dive into spoiler territory. So with that in mind, you can stay at your own risk and listen to my thoughts on the actual story, or you can go and watch the movie for yourself right now. So the film starts by Gru going to his high school reunion at Lycée Parbonne, a school of villainy led by Professor Ubelschlecht that Gru attended and graduated in 1985 at the age of 20. And at the same time, he also reunited with his rival, Maxime Lamal. Maxime is given the award for greatest villain of the class of 85, and when Maxime goes to get his award, he reveals exactly what his villain powers are, and that is cockroach. He literally turned himself into a cockroach man hybrid. And I gotta say, that's really cool. Definitely rememberable. And at this point, Gru actually reveals that he's working for the AVL, despite being surrounded by a bunch of villains who he knew as students and friends, and yet he still makes the stupid decision to reveal that he's an AVL agent. And then he fights against Maxime, at which point Maxime gets captured and thrown in prison. And then Gru ends up going home to his family, and he reunites with his loving girls, and especially his wife, Lucy. And then it's revealed that Gru actually has a newborn son in Gru Jr. Why couldn't they have actually given this baby a legitimate name? I seriously think he could have benefited from having an actual name. But as we learn, Lucy ended up becoming a stay-at-home wife so that she could take care of Gru Jr., while Gru himself went out on AVL missions and took down criminals. And this led to Gru Jr. forming a relationship with Lucy, not so much with Gru, which is really sad because at this point, Jr. is kind of destined to make Gru's life a living hell, which is really sad because Gru has had a pretty bad life when it comes to his biological family. His mother and father ended up divorcing, taking away his twin brother Drew, and his mother actually resents the fact that she had to raise him, which is extremely disappointing. And now his very first biological son actually hates him. That's really sad. Anyway, we learned that Maxime Lamal actually escaped from prison with the help of his girlfriend, Valentina, and his army of cockroach minions, which, yeah, Maxime actually has an army of minions that don't get used at all in this movie, which is really disappointing. But it kind of makes sense. What can a cockroach do against a single person? Not much. What can an army do against a single person? That person's gonna be frightened for their life. Anyway, Maxime wants revenge against Gru, and thus Silas Ramsbottom, the former head of the AVL, comes out of retirement to tell Gru that they need to go into hiding, and they move to Little Mayflower, where they assume new identities. Gru becomes Chet Cunningham, and Lucy becomes his wife, Blanche. And the girls go from Margot, Edith, and Agnes to Bree, Blair, and Brittany. And Gru Jr., of course, becomes Chet Jr. And I gotta say, why couldn't they have just officially changed his name to Chet at this point? That would have been so much better than sticking with Gru Jr. And the Minions end up going to move in with the AVL, where they will be taken care of. And the same thing happens with Kyle and Lucky. Kyle being the dog, I guess, and Lucky being the one-horned goat. Then the family goes about their new lives, and Chet goes to meet his next-door neighbors, the Prescotts, and when they do, he says that he wants to be part of their country club, and then while dropping off Bree at school, Margot accidentally lets slip that Gru is his real name in front of Poppy Prescott. And so Poppy ends up blackmailing Gru to help her in a heist where she's going to steal the honey badger mascot of Le Si Pas Bon, and thus secure her legacy and make it so that she has the potential to be a great villainess and thus eligible for the School of Villainy. And I gotta say that I really like Poppy's character, especially the way that she manages to actually come across as scary and intimidating, despite the fact that she has braces which give her a lisp. Which, gotta say, great voice acting on that part. But when Gru hears about this heist, he says that Poppy can't do anything, she's just a kid. And then Poppy says, "Didn't you steal the crown jewels when you were just 12 years old?" Yeah, that's not true. Gru was actually a lot younger. Like, he was 3 years old when he stole the crown jewels. So that makes sense. If anyone shouldn't be belittling kids being evil, it's Gru. So I don't understand why they did that. I mean, wasn't that the whole point of Minions: The Rise of Gru? But we're going to take a break from that storyline and discuss the rest. So Lucy, known as Blanche, goes to her job as a hairstylist, where she tries to get a really snobby customer to have good hair, and she ruins it. To the point where the hair literally falls out and combusts, and there's a fire, and yeah, that's not gonna go well for Blanche. Margot, now known as Bree, is upset over the fact that she had to say goodbye to all of her old friends, and now she has to make new friends. We don't really see much of that plot, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, maybe if we knew some of Margot's friends from the previous movies, which we never learn anything about them, it kind of makes sense why they wouldn't dedicate screen time to that plot, since we wouldn't be knowing anything about Margot's old friends, so why should we know anything about her new friends? At the same time, Agnes is trying to learn to cope with her brand new name, Brittany.
Here you go, Brittany.
I can't say my name is Brittany. That would be a lie.
Why can't you be more like your sister Edith? She lies all the time.
No, I don't.
See, she's lying right now. Beautifully, I might add.
Because the problem is that if she says her name is Brittany, she's lying, and she doesn't want to lie, like, at all. Which I gotta say, good for you, Agnes. But you also have to stay safe, so you need to learn to lie. But of course, the fact is that Agnes doesn't learn to lie, so when Lucy drops off the girls at their karate class, the karate sensei actually calls Agnes forward and says, "Tell us your name!" At which point Agnes just sits there silently because she can't say that her name is Brittany because she doesn't want to lie, but she can't say her name is Agnes because that would be revealing their identities, and they're supposed to be secret. So in the end, she gets in trouble, and then the sensei picks on Edith, asking if she's going to give him trouble, and she does. She uses her ninja skills from the second movie to break his pinky toe to defend her sister. That's a really nice moment right there. Except for the fact that Edith also got in trouble for it. And then, of course, we also have the Minions. Now, the Minions in this movie are at the AVL, and we don't really get to see anything from them, which I gotta say is good, except they also got the storyline of the Mega Minions. They chose 5 specific minions to get superpowers. Essentially, one can fly, one has super strength, one is essentially made of rocks, the other can stretch super long, and the 5th one, it has a laser for an eyeball. They actually spend a majority of the movie going around the city, pulling off a bunch of rescues that go horribly wrong, and so they end up getting fired, and then they're actually hired back when Gru gets compromised, and they don't actually do anything in this movie. Once again, the Minions are just there for laughs and giggles. Plah. Anyway, back to the main story, where Gru is actually trying to get along with Gru Jr. Now that he's no longer working for the AVL, since he's in hiding, he actually has the time to be a dad, and he wants to get to know his son. Unfortunately, his son wants to torture him, like, all the time. And it doesn't help that he's being blackmailed into pulling off a heist with Poppy. So they actually go grab a hot air balloon, and they use it to get to the school, at which point Gru grabs one of the 2 bags that he packed, which should be full of heist stuff, but instead it's full of baby things. So the Minions come down to actually get the baby stuff so they can take care of Gru Jr., and in the process leave the hot air balloon and the bag of actual heist stuff unattended, meaning the balloon flies off. So now Gru has to improvise, pulling off the heist using a bunch of baby stuff. And I gotta say, I love the heist sequence. It was very funny and creative. Paper clips to get through glass alongside those milk bottle things. And then there's also diapers covering surveillance cameras. And who could forget baby powder on lasers? Which, isn't that what you normally do anyway? Anyway, Gru and Poppy managed to pull off the heist and get Lenny the honey badger with some antics involved, but unfortunately they are discovered by Principal Ubelschlett, who ends up calling Maxime Lamal, who was hunting down Gru, and when they get home, a bunch of stuff happens. First, Gru and Gru Jr. have actually grown closer. For once, the baby Gru Jr. is actually seeing Gru as a cool dad now that he's actually been on a heist with him. And for the first time, he actually showcases love towards Gru. And then Lucy ends up going shopping with Edith and Agnes, but unfortunately is caught by the person whose hair that she ruined, so they manage to escape that. And then the Prescotts actually invite Gru and Lucy to join them at the country club for tennis, during which one of the Minions keeps giving Mr. Prescott the red card. Meanwhile, the girls are visited by Poppy, who brings in the honey badger, at which point Professor Ubelschlett uses the honey badger's tracking device to track down Gru and his family, at which point she enters the house, waits for Gru to come home, and then when Gru and Lucy get back after Margot texts them, she attacks relentlessly, trying to find Lenny, but in the process ends up pushing baby Gru outside of the front door right into the hands of Maxime Lamal. And the thing is, Maxime Lamal wants to kidnap Gru Jr. so that he can actually use Gru Jr. against Gru and get his revenge, which actually succeeds. So Gru, working with Poppy, who pretty much started this mess, actually goes on a mission against Maxime Lamal to try and get Gru Jr. back, and then they crash the cockroach jet into a building, and when they do, Maxime exits with baby Gru, except Gru Jr. has actually been turned into a half-human, half-cockroach hybrid, and so the two actually fight against Gru, and that's actually kind of sad because Gru has finally gotten the chance to bond with his kid, and now his kid is trying to kill him. And then Gru is about to fall to his death, and instead of getting upset, he actually accepts his death and says his final goodbye to Gru Jr. It's a goodbye that signifies he loves Gru Jr. so much with all of his heart, and at the same time, he forgives him for what he's about to do. And then Gru Jr., hit with the emotional thing that babies have, actually snaps out of the cockroach control and decides to fight back against Maxime Lamal. And thus, Gru and Gru Jr. fight back against Maxime Lamal, push him off a building. And then, thanks to Maxime's cockroach ability, he actually survives the fall. And the Mega Minions show up out of nowhere to beat up the already beaten up Maxime Lamal. Yeah, like I said, the Mega Minions don't really do anything for this story. And then the movie ends with Gru visiting Maxime Lamal in prison and rubbing it in his face that he stole Maxime's thing for the talent show when they were kids. And then they get into a fight, and that eventually leads to them putting on a show in the prison for all of the prison members. And that's when the ending really brings home the nostalgia bait, because pretty much every single villain that you can think of actually shows up in this prison scene. You got Maxime and his girlfriend Valentina, and you have Scarlet and Herb Overkill from the Minions movie, not to mention the Vicious Five, including Bell Bottom, Jean-Claude, Nunchuck, Stronghold, and Svengeance, which I gotta say, all of those guys look great for aging up 40 years. And you also have the Despicable Me villains like El Macho, Balthazar Brat, Mr. Perkins actually shows up, and of course, Vector! Oh yeah! But that's not everyone. Dr. Nefario shows up, and he actually makes it so that Gru Jr. gets a bit of surgery done, so he's no longer half cockroach. He's entirely fully human now, which I'm happy that Dr. Nefario returned, but he wasn't played by Russell Brand. In fact, he kind of wasn't really played by anyone. Somebody actually replaced him, but we don't even know who the guy is. He was uncredited, which probably means he was a storyboard guy, and they couldn't pay Russell Brand to come in to just give 1 or 2 lines. Poppy managed to get to the school Lycée Pabon, and then the family moves into their old house and they celebrate defeating Maxime Lamal by throwing a party and inviting pretty much everybody. You got AVL agents, Kyle, Lucky, and the Gru family, including Marlena Gru and Drew. Everybody shows up at the end of Despicable Me 4 that you can think of, and that's really awesome. But then that begs the question, why wasn't Drew and Marlena in the actual film itself as main characters? Well, for one thing, they couldn't actually contact any extended family because they were supposed to go into hiding. No one could know where they were, so it makes sense why their extended family would not show up in this film. And at the same time, it also would have taken up a lot of screen time and unnecessary plot threads that would have made the story even worse, which is actually really good. So there's always a silver lining. But even better is the fact that that ending kind of signifies that this is most likely the end of the Despicable Me movies, especially when they literally say the line, "Nothing lasts forever." I don't know about you guys, but that kind of gave me the vibe that this will be the final Despicable Me movie. That, or it's going to be the final film where the girls don't actually age up, because I mean, how is it that the first film takes place in the late May of 2012, then the second film takes place in the early May of 2013, and then a year later, the Gru and Lucy do actually get married, and then a couple months after that, in the year 2014, we have Despicable Me 3 take place. And then, 9 months after that, Gru Jr. is born, he grows up a little bit to the point where he can crawl, so it's probably been over a year since the third film, which means that it is now officially the year 2015 by the time Despicable Me 4 takes place. And this is actually even more confirmed by the fact that Gru has a high school reunion from a class that he graduated in 1985. Well, if the film takes place in 2015, that makes it the 30-year anniversary. So yeah, that's about right for a high school reunion. So how is it that the girls have gone from the year 2012 to 2015 with absolutely no difference whatsoever? I think that if they do manage to make a Despicable Me 5, then it's going to obviously have a time skip where the girls actually manage to age up. Because, like they said at the very end of the movie, nothing lasts forever. This film makes it feel like that Despicable Me 4 is the end of a saga. And if it's the end of the Despicable Me films as a whole, I would be okay with it. But I don't think it's going to be because Despicable Me is literally Illumination's cash grab franchise. It's their go-to. So if anything, I think that they either make a Despicable Me 5 where the girls actually age up, or they could make a Minions 3 where Gru actually tries to get into the school of villainy with the help of Wild Knuckles, or they could actually go with what they marketed was going to happen, that of course being a Mega Minions movie. Yeah, a movie that literally focuses on the Mega Minions superheroes introduced in Despicable Me 4. They even gave it a release slate of 2027, which, yeah, this was just a marketing stunt, but I think that it actually could happen because Illumination likes to give us one Despicable Me film every 2 to 3 years. I mean, just looking back, 2010 is the first movie. 3 years later, 2013, we have Despicable Me 2. 2 years after that, in 2015, we got Minions. Then 2 years after that, in 2017, Despicable Me 3. And then it was supposed to come out in 2020, 3 years after Despicable Me 3, but in 2022, we ended up getting Minions: The Rise of Gru, and 2 years after that, we got Despicable Me 4 in 2024. So, given another 3 years, and I can probably guarantee that there's going to be another Despicable Minions film in 2027. Whether it be Despicable Me 5, Minions 3, Mega Minions, or some other spin-off, I have no idea. But honestly, at this point, I don't think the franchise is going to die anytime soon. So anyway, back to Despicable Me 4. Overall, I thought that the film was really good, and honestly, a pretty great stopping point for the finale. Not only did it have a really nice villain in the form of Maxime Lamal, but it also felt like a finale thanks to that ending where they kind of brought everything together from all 6 movies into one. This movie was funny, it had some great quality voice acting, and granted, it had a really good story, even if it could sometimes feel a little bit predictable, or maybe even rushed thanks to all of the many plot threads that thread together to form one coherent story, which I actually find to be really good. Except for the Mega Minions. Why did they have to go with superheroes when they could have just done something like The Office, but with minions? They literally did that in the marketing for Minions: The Rise of Gru, so why not here? But honestly, overall, Despicable Me 4 is a really great movie. Maybe not as good as the first 2, but definitely better than the third. And that's really saying something because I really enjoy the third film. If you want, you can check out my review. I left a link down below to an Illumination playlist where you can see all my reviews for the Illumination films. But anyway, that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe so you can get more reviews like this, and also so you can keep up to date on all things DreamWorks, as this is a mostly DreamWorks focused channel. With that in mind, I hope that you're all staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.
Insert card and remove rapidly. Card not red? Come on.
Did you pull it out rapidly?
Yes, very rapidly. Oh.